With only a few days left before the ANC holds its provincial conference in the Northwest, some branches have raised concerns regarding what they say is the party's disregard of their disputes. They allege that some branches have not been launched. Some have elected bogus delegates, while others were launched in the absence of other members in good standing. The Interim Provincial Committee is currently holding a media briefing. Let's take you there live.
Thank you very much, Comrade Kenny. Let me take this opportunity to greet the members of the media. And as we have already apologized that we're starting quite late. And I hope that the apology put forward by Comrade Kenny is accepted. I just want to go quickly to the statement of the IPC on the preparations for the 9th Provincial Conference of the ANC in the Northwest Province. The Interim Provincial Committee held its special meeting on the 17th of June 2022 to receive a report on the state of readiness for the convening of the 9th Provincial Conference of the ANC in the Northwest Province. The IPC was established by the National Executive Committee on August the 16th, 2019 to unite and renew the building of the African National Congress in the province. The rebuilding process has been long, tedious, and fraught with various challenges, including reconstruction of the PTT into the IPC. This was further compounded by the evidence of the COVID-19 pandemic that engulfed the whole world. As we rose from the virus that brought the entire world to a total halt, government across the world were preoccupied with preserving human life, though many measures, including lockdowns. A year later, as we contested local government elections and ensured a victory for the African National Congress, while we experienced a countrywide decline in our electoral performance, as the initial majority of the tradition, if we have managed to win back majority of the traditional ANC wards in the province, which recorded the victory for the African National Congress in the Northwest Province. Although it has been few months since the local government elections, we can confirm that the monumental task of establishing ANC branches in the province in preparation for the provincial conference has been achieved. As we rose across the land, as we crossed the length and breadth of our province to prepare for qualifying branches for their own BBGMs, annual by general meetings, as a build-up to the provincial conference and later the regional conference. We have surpassed the required 70% threshold for branch to hold the provincial conference of branches that are in good standing. While the new membership engagement system has contributed to the rebuilding and credible branches and has brought to an end gatekeeping tendencies which were endemic in our province, as we all know the challenges that most of our structures were confronted with. There has been instances of manipulation of BBGM process. A few months ago, the IPC established conference committees to prepare for the upcoming provincial conference. The Provincial Dispute Resolution Committee, which comprises of IPC members and representatives from all leagues, as responsible for the hearing and resolving all disputes emanating from branch biannual general meeting. A total number of disputes lodged with the PDRC stands at 105, while many have been resolved. Over 20 branches have been ordered to rerun of their BBGMs. The PDRC will meet today to finalize all outstanding disputes. It must be noted that the ANC members may approach the National Dispute Resolution Committee to appeal the outcome of the provincial PDRC, as we have seen a number of them already have sort of taken the matter to the national office. The IPC has resolved to postpone the provincial conference to allow for the dispute resolution process to run its course, to include the possible of appeal process, which we have already said that the appeal process will then be lodged with the national office. The postponement will also pave the way for BBGMs, which have been ordered for the rerun process emanating from the PDRC. The IPC has resolved that the Provincial Conference should convene by not later than the second week of August. Discussion document currently the process that we are embarking on in terms of the preparations for the policy conference, that the discussion is taking place between ourselves and the national deployees, including the Office of the Secretary General, to agree on such a proposal that the IPC has put forward. The IPC firmly committed to ensuring that all disputes are amicably resolved and legitimately delegates chosen by branches to participate in the provincial and the regional conference. We call on all branches to convene their biannual general meetings to ensure that the national policy documents are discussed, as a branch remain the place where ANC policy is discussed and formulated. We will further deploy IPC members, IRC members to various branches across the province to ensure that this important discussion does take place, especially in terms of policy documents that have been forwarded currently to all structures across the province. Thank you very much.
I'm going to thank you very much, Comrade Coordinator. Before I allow for questions, there's a matter which we need to clarify, which has been quite expatiated on in the statement. We do not take ourselves to conference. The National Executive Committee takes the province to conference. Now, the IPC has arrived at the determination that the provincial conference should be postponed because of disputes that are outstanding and resolved and because of reruns. But that discussion is subject to the concurrence of the National Executive Committee, whether through the officials, and as we've said, there are discussions that are ensuing between the IPC officials, NEC deployees to the Northwest, and NEC officials to arrive at a determination. But as the situation stands, it is imperceptible that we will be ready to go to conference, given the fact that there must be reruns, disputes must be resolved, appeals, if any, may be lodged with the National Dispute Resolution Committee. So that process will then have to take shape in that form. So I thought that should be clarified. I'm going to allow for questions, if any. Do you want to say anything?
No, I think you have covered the space that is critical.
Hi, Zianda Mabo from Newsroom Africa. I just wanted to seek clarity here. So you would have had these 105 disputes before the Provincial Dispute Resolution Committee. I'm just trying to figure out why then you would have set down the states, knowing that you hadn't dealt with the appeals process just yet. So you've got about 20 branch general meetings that need to resit, and there's also a possibility of appeals. Why wasn't this factored in then by the Provincial Dispute Resolution Committee when it started dealing with these issues?
Okay. Well, initially we thought that in terms of the roadmap agreed upon, we thought by this time we'll have sort of resolved all of these disputes. But obviously it depended on the nature of the dispute itself. This is what determined a delay, because clearly some of the disputes were in fact had to be dealt with not once, but branches have to appear many times. Sometimes branches were which confirmed the complicity of how these disputes were. So that's why where we are now, with the outcome that has confirmed that almost 20 branches have been now sent back for rerun, it means that you will not be able to proceed to conference because we want to run a clean, credible conference. So therefore, it's important to give a hearing and to allow such branches to do a rerun. You'll understand that part of the mandate of the IPC has been the rebuilding of the ANC. So therefore, anything that comrades feel that it has not gone through the normal guidelines in terms of the BBGMs, we will then have to pay attention and allow such matters to be attended and to be resolved. Ours is not just to rush to a provincial conference, but is to make sure that we have credible structures, we have credible delegates who will come to that conference, and therefore making sure that those that are sent by their branches carry the mandate of the branch rather than end up having dispute to be dealt with in a conference. So it's more better to give this enough time in terms of the mandate of the IPC that to rebuild and to unite the province. So part of this dispute is part of the mandate of rebuilding, meaning that we must listen to each and every dispute and resolve it. I think that's an approach that we're taking.
Pat, and then I'll give you a second bite.
I've got 3 questions. Can I go?
Yeah, you may.
Thank you very much. My name is Patrick Dintwa from the SABC. Tata Chauke, are you at liberty to can share with us? We're talking about disputes. Are you at liberty to can share to us the nature of the dispute that you guys have confronted with? And then secondly, when we engage with particularly those that are complaining, your members that are complaining on the ground, they are also mentioning the issue of the composition of the Provincial Dispute Resolution Committee, saying, according to them, majority of them got vested interest because they are nominated to run for what you call the provincial chairperson position. We talk about Nonomaloi, we talk about Kinetri, we talk about Re Sololari as the provincial treasurer. And to them, they view this as conflict of interest. They are saying you cannot be a player and a referee center because these people are the ones that should, try to resolve their dispute, and then they are also sitting on that. What are you saying with regard? Is this concern fair according to you? And the last question is, I know when you started as the IPC in 2019, your main mandate was to rebuild structures of the ANC. But when you reflect and look back, it's almost 3 to 4 years now that you have been in office. When you look back, will you confidently say, and with pride for that matter, that you have achieved your mandate of ensuring that there's unity in the province, there's proper structures that are built? Because I believe if that would have been achieved wholeheartedly and 100%, would not be sitting here, would not have had your provincial conference postponed for the 4th time today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, let me start with the last one, Comrade Kenny. That I think the work done by the IPC, that's why I always refer to the terms of reference of establishment of the IPC. One of the things that we did when we assumed the responsibility was to do an assessment in terms of the state of the organization. And it was very clear that having visited all regions and sub-regions and interacted with what we may term to be branches of the ANC, we came to that conclusion we did not have an organization. That is why we then went out and established almost the 407 interim branch committees of the ANC, because it was very clear that we did not have a solid, strong organization on the ground. So we're disrupted by a number of factors, in fact, and I think it may not be 4 years, I think we're only almost 3 years, not even 3 years yet. The COVID-19, which we're making that point in our statement, which lasted for quite some time. I think you'll know that almost 2 or 1.5 years, almost 2 years, we were unable to convene any meetings, neither to have political activities in the country. And that, in fact, has impacted quite very negative on the work of the IPC in terms of its mandate. Number 2 has been local government elections. So we had to refocus all what we have established, the interim structures that we have established on the ground, now to focus on elections, turn that interim structures into elections machinery. So we spend most of the time now having to work and to prepare for local government elections, which results, I think all of us are happy. And the IPC were proud that we have managed to retain all the wards, in fact, the municipalities in the province led by the African National Congress. And we are making that point again in the statement that that's where we have to focus our energy. But from 0 to almost 360 structures established, 316 established today, it's an achievement. Looking into all these other engagements and challenges that we have gone through, you know, at the same time, establishment of this was not innocent. It was to do again with rebuilding of the ANC, meaning that in areas where there are parallel structures, we have to put together comrades to form one structure. And I think today we are very happy and proud that out of the 403 wards that we have in the province, 316 are confirmed branches. That's why we have even made the threshold and surpassed the threshold in terms of the constitutional requirement of how many branches form the 70%. So where the IPC is sitting, we are confident and happy that we have achieved the mandate of the IPC. We'll continue doing that. These matters of disputes, let us not read them as disunity. Let's read them as part of the guidelines. In fact, as you raised the point that what are some of these disputes, which are not going into detail, but the reality is that the guidelines are very clear, is that meetings must be advertised in time, must be publicized, members of the ANC in that particular ward, they must meet before. That's why we call what we call the pre-BGM. And most of the pre-BGMs will not have taken place. That's why we are now dealing with disputes at a time that we have now to go to BBGMs, right? The pre-BBGM was to deal with all of these challenges. Make sure that members are informed in time, make sure that members have checked themselves to be members in good standing. You know, with this new membership system of the ANC now that we have, which in fact has helped, in fact, to clean up the organization on the point that we are making again the statement in terms of gatekeeping. Now members, when they qualify to meet, there must be a code that they must get from the new membership system, which allows them, in fact, now that they can convene, right? There must be a scanner, meaning that it must be members physically who must be in that BGM meeting, right? So we still believe and we know that there are people who are still taking chances, harvesting ID books, you know, without bringing warm bodies to a meeting. These are some of the challenges that we are still dealing with. But they're not as much as, you know, we may take it that the province is still highly divided. These are just normal areas of disputes that we're dealing with. And I believe that in terms of the guidelines, everything that we do is within the guideline. So therefore it means that it must be within the guideline, first of all, that dispute. The committee that is responsible in terms of the guideline that establishes these committees, it's instructed to the IPC members who must constitute the committee. So it means that members, as they deal with these disputes, you then put aside your personal interests aside. You deal with and you listen to a dispute in terms of the guidelines and resolve it in a manner that befit, you know, the organizational principles in terms of how we deal with challenges that are confronting the organization. So the guidelines are very clear. You cannot, in fact, even want to work against the guidelines. Members that are aggrieved again, if they raise concerns in terms of the dispute committee, they still have another option to go to national and to appeal whatever decision that the dispute committee may have sort of deal with, not in favor of whoever that has lodged a dispute. So they are still given that opportunity to go to national. And we have seen a group that went to national, in fact, making a call that the dispute committee must be transparent, must communicate with them in time. And that's one of the weaknesses we have identified, in fact, in terms of having to communicate the outcome in time to those who have lodged disputes, right? So it's a matter that we're attending to. And in this period, in fact, again, is to beef up in terms of the administrative part of the dispute committee to make sure that it's able to respond to all of these issues that they are confronted with in time. And so I think in terms of that, we are quite satisfied. And we are very happy, in fact, that the Northwest is moving to a particular direction that all of us can confirm that we now see progress in terms of unity. There used to be, moments in the Northwest where there was just chaos everywhere. I mean, the element of violence that we have experienced. And that we cannot talk about it anymore now, right? It then confirms that a lot of work has been done, but we'll continue to do that. The renewal process is ongoing. It's not going to be a once-off. We are going to continue with the renewal, even if after the IPC, even the incoming PEC will still be confronted with the issue of the renewal, which is ongoing, and the rebuilding of the organization. What we want to see is solid branches of the African National Congress on the ground that can do work and make sure that there's implementation of ANC policy and holding those that are responsible, especially our councillors on the ground currently without structures. They're not accountable anywhere, right? So those branches of the ANC play a crucial role in making sure that there's accountability and there's a link and a contact between themselves and communities where they reside.
I think the last point we need to make is that the Provincial Dispute Resolution Committee is a subcommittee of the IPC. So it still reports to the IPC, and we've done our assessment. In our last IPC meeting of the work that has been undertaken by the PDRC, and we can safely confirm that although there are these allegations that these cadres are referees and players at the same time, these allegations are without merit. And this is a determination we've been able to make, because it will be an indictment on the IPC should members of the IPC who serve as members of the PDRC elect to discredit their own process of dispute resolution committee. It will be an indictment on the IPC, but it will also be an indictment on their credibility as candidates, because you've said that they are candidates. It will be an indictment on their credibility as candidates. I don't think that it would be easy for anyone to think that they can simply manipulate or corrupt the dispute resolution process. I don't think that can be achieved. But I think the second important point is what the coordinator communicates. The fact that there is a recourse for those who are not content with the processes and the outcomes of the PDRC. And for us, that is sufficient to qualify that this process will be fair, and that although there might be possible litigation, we will never know. ANC processes are litigious in their own nature. But we think that we would have been able to cap these possible litigations to the most minimal of levels. I think that's an important point which we wanted to make. Z?
I'm covered now.
Are you
Thank
covered?
You. Yes.
Pat? No, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
But we will not allow you to go before treatment is always showing us that otherwise they will kill us.
Okay.
What's the interview?
No, it's fine. No, we can go through.
Okay, we come out of that press conference happening in the Northwest with the ANC. As we've just heard, the interim provincial committee has decided to postpone, of course, that conference that was expected to sit next week, hot off the heels of those disputes that we heard, which are being addressed now with journalists. And we heard that these are disputes that are before the Dispute Resolution Committee. And we heard there as well Hlomani Chauke for the ANC speaking about the need to have unity in the party, as well as the transparency that they're talking about, that they're hoping that the Dispute Resolution Committee will have in resolving all these disputes before it then. We leave it there for this one.